Richards trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Street Bullies podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
Hey, howdy, hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Street Bullies. I am John, and I'm here with my boy, Casey.
Hey, we're just going to have a natural conversation, just two dudes in their basement, chatting it up.
Two dudes in the basement, chatting it up. Derek might be joining us. He was with us when we first started this little shindig, but someone in his household is having a meltdown, and I'll just leave
Derek
it at
might
that.
join us, or he might be starting a Dateline episode right now in real life.
Right. The next time you find Derek, he'll be on a true crime pod. And then Hoagie, Hoagie's just living that struggle life. He's 18, newly married, got tons to do. He just can't quite make time for the show these days.
Yeah, I know. So Hoagie's like, for our loyal listener, Hoagie's dilemma is every week he's got men's league hockey, and he's like, I can't do Mondays. So naturally, we're always like, let's do Monday.
Right.
But this week we're like, okay, let's all do Wednesday, and that's been the Hoagie's like, I'm out. And we're like, what?
No explanation. Just I'm out. I'm like, did he quit? Did it finally happen?
But I don't know. He said we tried to mic him up, and then we named him somehow the Sean Avery of men's league, which I can only imagine how obnoxious he is.
Oh God, especially if he has a few beforehand. If he's half of Holiday Party Hoagie, I can't imagine he's a lot of fun to play.
Oh, man, would you rather have Holiday Hoagie again, like drunken, stumbling incoherence, or have to deal with Sean Avery like sober?
Oh,
that's a tough one.
That's a tough one because Holiday Hoagie was not as entertaining as I thought he was going to be.
I thought it would be outlandish, like banter. It was like
incoherent jargon.
Anyway,
pretty similar.
Hoagie, kind of.
So it's All-Star break. We've got some stuff to talk about, I guess. But Casey, I did want to bring up something before we dove into the hockey talk, because my wife got me a gym membership for Christmas.
Oh boy.
And I've always been like really into working out. We have a Peloton. We got a Peloton when COVID started, and that's all well and great, but like I needed to start getting out of the house.
Right.
So Carrie got me a gym membership, and the gym has always had its fair share of Muppets.
Is it like Lifetime, like Fancy Gym, or are you dealing with like LA?
Oh, it's a Blink Fitness, man.
It's all Planet Fitness or Crunch Fitness.
Oh, there he is. Look at him.
There he is. Pickle tickler and all. All right.
So I'm in the middle. I want to pitch something to you guys. So the gym has had its fair share of Muppets since I can ever remember, right? There's the guys who clearly get ready to go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
They like gel up their hair. There's the
tryhards.
There's the morons that are supposed to be spotting people, and they're like looking in the mirror, flexing their quad muscles, because who cares what your quad muscle looks like? But now I haven't been to a gym in a few years, but there's a new creature, and they are everywhere. The backpack bringer. They literally carry around a backpack filled with mysterious goods that they never open and take out.
It's the supplements, bro.
But they never take anything out. There's no way there's that many jacked homeless people all of a sudden where people are just bringing their goods with them. Casey, what
are
do they have
legit backpacks, or are they like the string backpacks?
No. They're like JanSport. JanSport could put your chemistry textbook backpack in it, and they're filled. Like, they're lumpy looking, and they all walk. They don't put them on their backs. They carry them like this. I'm like, whoever thought this made you look like a tough guy? I have no idea. But
Is
what's
there
in
not
it?
a locker room in there? Or
No, there is.
powder.
It's a beautiful locker room.
It's the powder peddlers. They're the guys with all the protein. They're the ones, the hookups, man. They're the gym membership drug dealers.
Right. There's so many of them. Like, I'm legit. I sit down.
Everybody wants a cut. It's a
I
big
know.
business.
I get caught just watching these guys with their backpacks, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here to work out, not figure out what's in their backpacks.
I mean, John, I don't want to sound like a prick, but like, you live in the epicenter of like Johnny Boom Bots, Long Island. I bring a backpack to gym work. Like, you're what, in like Islip or something? Like
Massapequa.
Like,
Same
you
thing.
you are ground zero for Goomba gym memberships.
Right. That and lifting in your jeans, I'm just not quite getting. Like,
To be fair.
backpacks so anybody who's listened to this, even if it's on the recorded, if you just want to shoot me a message, if you're a backpack bringer to the gym, I'm really curious what you got in there. Like, you just go and empty your sock drawer, put it in your backpack, and then bring it to the gym just because it's cool.
Weight training and cardio. Walk to the gym with bricks in the backpack.
Maybe, I don't know. Like, maybe they're going to the laundromat after, and they just don't want to leave their clothes in the locker room.
You don't know what's in there. Who are you to judge?
I want to judge, but I need to know what's in the backpacks.
Speaking of judging, let's make this a Flyers podcast. Let's judge some friggin' Flyers.
How relevant?
Me and Derek made a living off of just ranting, right? With
We
this,
did. We did. It's paid us pretty handsomely.
Keep going. I didn't realize this was a two-parter. Go for it.
No. I'm done. I promise. I'm done.
Yeah, we obviously made such a living that we were able to bring you and Hoagie on.
Right.
So,
Right. Paying them handsomely.
take that for what you will. But to kind of take over the hosting duties as John could before I had to put the kid to sleep, literally. Thank you. Who's that? Who's the guy from Big Day, like Strongbow or whatever? Like, this is sleeper hold. Put my kid in a sleeper hold. That's the joke, really. Keith J. Strongbow. What was it?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Let's do the thing. Casey wants to talk
Kids
about
asleep
the
now.
Flyers.
We're all good. Let's talk about the Flyers. So we're going to foreshadow a little bit in terms of where we were towards the beginning of the season when we did, I believe it was a 4-episode segment when it came to the Thrive or Die. But prefacing that, we're going to talk a little bit about the core of this team. I think that we've gotten to a point in the season where we can kind of surmise who might be a part of that core moving forward and who might not be, at least in regards to our opinions on it. So I wanted to start, I'm not necessarily going to run through the roster name by name, but I think there's one or two guys we could unanimously say are part of this core, if I'm not mistaken. So, John, I'm going to kick it to you. If you want to start off with a name here, we can even open this up for debate. If we want to throw a couple names out there and say, are they a part of the core? Are they not a part of the core? I mean, what format do you think is going to best fit this type of discussion?
Well, I mean, considering that you just completely wanted to skip over the first segment,
What first segment?
just general feelings of the team. Remember what we talked about 5 minutes ago?
I don't remember what we talked about 5 seconds ago. I think it had something to do with backpacks. Like, I don't know.
Oh, that was the first segment.
That was the first segment. That's why it skipped my mind. So
yeah.
let's rewind. Anyways, let's talk about general feelings about this team. We're at the All-Star break here. An All-Star break for the Flyers, it's longer than most teams. But
now you're a All-Star.
Right? You've been waiting forever to say that happened.
Right. I literally have it written down that this was going to be the name of an episode.
We're not going to talk about Hayes again, though. I love it.
Let's talk general thoughts on this team now that we've gotten to this point in the season. So now, John, if you want to kick it off this way, we can do it now.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm like you don't want to talk. Like,
well, no, I feel like
that's not the case.
At the beginning of the season, well, before the season even started, right? I was ready by this point to just like burn it all, like just sell off everything. I don't care at all about any piece on this roster, and I don't feel like that. I feel like pretty good about the foundation that's being created by John Tortorella. At the same time, and I don't know if this makes a bunch of sense, I'm not very interested in what's going on right now. Like, I feel good about what's taking place, and I hope that it turns into something. But at this juncture of the season where it's like the trade deadline's still a few weeks away, we're not a playoff team, I can't really pump myself up to watch this team play, knowing it's going to be like a hard-fought battle. But I don't know. Like,
we're only a few points out, though. You know that, right?
Stop. Like, I
Hoagie's not here. Someone's got to be optimistic,
right? I guess I feel good about the direction that we're headed, but it's just not an exciting thing to experience right now for me. I don't know if that makes much sense, but
no, absolutely. I think that makes perfect sense. What do you think, Casey?
Yeah, I think if you look at this in like a macro level, where the last 2 years, what we saw was the worst Flyers hockey, with the exception of 06-07, which you guys may not have been old enough to remember, but I remember it pretty damn
still
well.
In high school.
That was brutal.
Same
I was like well into my career at that point. It was brutal. The last 2 years have been worse, and so what we're seeing now is a positive trajectory.
Sure,
it's still not great, but if you look at it just from like a macro level, like, okay, I think we are going in the right direction. Now, I think like with this team specifically, we're probably from a standing standpoint at the All-Star break, like probably exactly where we thought we would be. I thought we were going to be a middle to lower tier team, which we are. We're, the thing that's frustrating is that if we had won half of those overtime games, then, we would be in serious playoff contention, even though I don't think we are a legit playoff contender, obviously.
Right.
And then it always just leaves you wondering, like, what if Couturier and Atkinson
Sure.
Forget Ellis. He's never lacing them up again. But what if those two players were here? It wouldn't take too much to push us over the edge for that extra 5 points, in overtime, which ends up getting us there. But that's all hearsay. I think there's positive stuff going on. We're probably losing to the teams that we should be losing to. We're beating some teams that we might. Minnesota, I know that we lost in overtime, but like we took them pretty hard, and they're
right.
top.
Winnipeg
took them. We took them to the woodshed. That was the best game I've seen all year.
Right.
We've taken Jersey. Like there's plenty of teams that we're competing with. We're not at the, we're not at the Boston, Tampa Bay. Like we're Carolina. We're just not there. Boston really beat the crap out of us. That was tough.
But that's fine that we're not there yet. Like this wasn't going to be ever. It was never going to be a 1-season turnaround type deal. It's probably not even a 2-season turnaround. Like this is going to be steps of progression moving forward. We're going to see improvement this year, which we already have, I believe. We're going to see some improvements next year. There will probably be some more pieces added, not necessarily indicative of contention, wanting to contend, those types of pieces, but you'll see them start to take effect. Younger players are going to grow into their roles. And then I think by year 3 is really when we're going to see this team gear towards wanting to make a run, wanting to at the very least make the playoffs and be very serious about contending. So what we're seeing this year, I'm hopeful. Like it gives you a little bit of hope. But as with every Flyers fan, hope is a very dangerous thing.
Can I, interject a little bit to what you were saying too? Because when you're saying that, obviously, if you're thinking about progression, we should be better next year. The thing that leads me, to kind of cause for concern is, we'll dive into it a little bit more in the show, but we're identifying players that most likely won't be a part of this team next year. And I think that they are big producers for this team, whether it be Kevin Hayes or Ivan Provorov or, Tony DeAngelo or somebody like that, where like, theoretically we should progress, but if we don't get a return that makes sense, or we can't use that cap space in a smart fashion, depending who's a GM, like there's no guarantee that we're going to be better than we were this year. You know what I mean?
And with Chuck Fletcher at the helm, that instills little confidence in me.
Right.
To get any type of good return.
And that's a fair point, John. It's like, I think we have like a better foundation, and we're we're gonna drop JVR at the trade deadline. Braun, whatever we can get for him. But like, the Hayes Provorovs, Tony D'Angelo's, and like, I'm sure a handful of others. Like, if we have some cap room, which we're finally going to have a little bit of cap room, it looks like. Can Chuck use that smartly, or is he going to be like, no, let's go ahead and let's extend Sealer.
Let's do the friendship thing again. But Nick DeLaurier, who are your buddies?
Right.
Oh, boy.
You know what? I'd take that over Hayes' boys any day of the week right now.
No, it's an interesting discussion because, again, like general thoughts of this team, like we are seeing the progressions, we're seeing them get better, but moving forward too, just as John had mentioned, what's going to happen in terms of the return that we get if we do decide to deal Hayes, if we do decide to deal Provorov, which in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, they're probably as good as gone when it comes to the off season. But, I don't have the faith in Chuck Fletcher to get a return that's worthy of sending the player out that he's trading. Right. Don't think we're going to get what Provorov's worth, whatever he is worth now that, that whole debacle happened. Don't think we're going to get what Hayes is worth either. To be fair, but I mean, I don't know. I'm hoping that, Fletcher's got a few tricks up his sleeve because the ones that he's used already have sucked. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I mean, I think it's fair to say we were pretty harsh about the Giroux deal, but we are starting to see Owen Tippett kind of come around. For
sure. Yeah.
Not saying that the trade was worth it, but
I think it was.
You think it was worth it?
Yeah, and now look at Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't have a first round pick till 2030. They freaking
sucks to
stink.
suck. No,
I think the Giroux thing was ripping a Band-Aid off. Now look, like, could we have gotten more from him if he agreed to waive his,
go anywhere else?
Yeah, go anywhere else other than Florida. I think sure, absolutely. But like, you know what, Giroux, that's why they have contracts. So like, and like that's why he signed it, is for that reason.
Yeah.
And we had to honor that. Now look, like Tippett, in my mind, I know we'll get to it. Like, I like him. I think he's a solid. Is he a top line winger? Probably not. But like, he's a middle six winger that's got a ripping shot, who is getting more and more confidence. And you look at him and you're like, oh yeah, like I like that. I like that a lot. Versus like, what was the best case scenario with Giroux? We signed Giroux to another 2-year deal, and we're still dealing with that. And like, look, I like Giroux, but like, time is gone. Rip the Band-Aid off. We had to do it to start this, not rebuild.
And I'm curious, like, where he would fit in our thrive or die. I just don't see him as being a Tortorella.
Wait, who was the guy who literally did? Who was the guy who like quit the team? I already forgot his name.
Sedlak.
I don't even think he was on because he wasn't with the team at that point.
We actually had a die on this thing. It's like,
we did. We had an actual die on the team.
And also, I'm so amazed that you reminded me, Derek, that we somehow in the offseason, we made that Thrive or Die segment last 4 episodes. Like, that's amazing.
August,
Talk about stretching it out, baby. Oh, yeah. Yep, we made it last. Hey, we had to. Let's be honest.
We can make something last, boys?
You. All right. So as I was alluding to here before John interrupted me with the point we wanted to get to, first and foremost, we want to talk about the core and some of these guys that we think are going to be a part of the core moving forward. We've seen a few of them really prove their worth, start to step up into the roles that we were expecting them to, and some not so much. But I think this is a good roundtable here in which we can start bringing up some names, kind of talk about, yes, no, whether they are a part of the core or not. So, I mean, either one of you have a preference? Do either one of you want to start with a name in particular? I guess let's kind of just snowball from here.
Well, I feel like there are 3 or 4 like obvious for each category. Thrive or die. Like for me, the thrives are, and maybe you disagree, Casey and Derek, but
we weren't talking about thrive or die.
We're talking about the core.
See, now you're skipping ahead.
Well, isn't that? I mean, it was like a spinoff of. Yeah. Well, like, okay.
We were gonna get to it. Jesus Christ.
Is that the same thing?
No.
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 I feel like it is.
They tie in together, but they're not the same. Sure.
Okay.
Thing.
So, the core. Oh man, like
it's like talking to my son. Jesus Christ.
I mean, except when I get to go to
yellow.
except when I want to go to bed, I don't throw a fit. I put my head down in the pillow.
Miss Lippy's car is green.
I grab Mr. Bear. And I go
I'll
to sleep.
I'll throw it out to end this stuttering mess. I'll start with the forwards. And do you want me to throw out my core, or do you want me just to throw out one and see where it lands?
Let's throw one and discuss.
Throw one. We'll do a little Simon
Sure.
Simon here.
No conversation.
TK, my number one.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
All right, Derek.
No question.
Owen Tippett.
Yes, confirmed.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't have said that at the beginning of the year, but I feel like at this point you can at least say that he is a building block for this team. You know.
Yes.
Scott Lawton. Or no, I'm sorry. I didn't answer Tippett. I'm a little hesitant about Tippett, but right now, yes.
All right. What are you hesitant about? Just because it has the sample size isn't that large?
I think so. I think that's what it is. I want to see more consistency. I've seen too many people that are like, he's going to be a 30 goal scorer, 25 consistent, 25. I'm like, what do you mean by consistent? Like, he hasn't really been a consistent NHLer his entire career. So let's not, in John's words, let's pump the brakes a little bit. But I can be hopeful.
Right.
I just don't want other people to get my hopes up with all that bullshit.
I just think like the scoring and the confidence, I think has increased where it's like, I'm confident enough for now to be like, if they're sitting down and creating a core, that he's a part of it.
Oh yeah.
Also,
and much to Casey's point, laser shot. I mean, fantastic shot.
I'm actually shocked at his, not to be a total hockey nerd, but his skating is incredibly good and he's fast. It's not shifty. He's not like TK Atkinson shifty, but he's like a fast, straight line guy. Like he's got a little maneuver.
Skating.
Yeah,
kind of.
Something this
Everything
team.
I wish JVR could be.
Just minus the hand-eye coordination.
All right, so Derek, you said who?
I said Scott Lawton.
Yes.
Paying homage to our boy Hoagie.
Right, obviously.
Absolutely. All right, Casey.
So this is so you named, we've gone through my three core. The fourth one, and this is where I ended on the forward front, is Noah Cates.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree with you.
His defensive game is fantastic. I mean, I think he could be a better Scott Lawton.
I think his offense is starting to round out a bit. And I just keep in mind that like right now he's playing first line minutes.
Right.
Imagine him on second or third line minutes against like quote unquote lesser opponents. Like this year is going to pay dividends for him in like from a learning curve standpoint.
Totally.
And theoretically, if we ever get Couturier back, things start falling in line in place for him a little bit more. I just he's been solid and it hasn't been like, ooh, he had a tough beginning of the season. Like he's been solid from day one. And I didn't see it.
It's his little trial period last year.
Yeah, I didn't even see it that much. I'm not saying it wasn't last year, but like I didn't really pay much attention. I was like, whatever, I'll deal with this guy next year.
Right.
But like he's Mr. Solid. And he's netting a few here and there. So like I think like if we look at TK Lots, Cates, and Tippett, that's like my confirmed forward core right now. I don't know if you guys have more you want to throw in there.
I agree with you. And the interesting thing is that, and unless Derek, you were going to mention this guy, were you going to mention somebody else, Derek? Because
not as part of the core, but I wanted to have a discussion as to why I don't think someone is part of the core.
And I think that's what I'm going to bring up. Farabee.
Exactly. Yep. I hate to say it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know.
He just, lackluster all year. I hate saying that, but I just don't see it right now.
No.
Yeah. And
but
he's somebody, sorry, Casey, he's somebody that I really did think was going to thrive under John Tortorella's system, and like the opportunity to be a young leader.
How much do you think of it is like no training camp, rush back from injury on his own accord versus like skill wise?
I think we're past that at this point, though. Like he's got to be in game shape. He's had plenty of time to get back up to being in game shape. Sure, missing camp and going through the plays and going through the systems and things like that. But that's what classroom time's for. That's what you're in the locker room doing. You're studying tape. You're looking at the systems. You're looking at Tortorella's approach to the games and how he handles things. That's learnable off the ice,
right?
The off the ice type stuff. you need to adapt on the fly, and he's had plenty of time, in my opinion, to do that, and we just really haven't seen it. Like, you see a glimpse here or there, but it's not consistent enough.
Well, and I think that. Oh, sorry, Casey. Go ahead.
I just feel like he's unnoticeable on most nights.
Yeah,
right.
Which isn't a good thing for a defenseman. That's a good thing, because that means they're not screwing up. For someone like Farabee, that's not good.
Well, and Tortorella has said this about certain players. I don't know if he's mentioned this about Farabee, but it's like on a roster where like it'd be pretty easy to be noticed, right? Like we desperately need some forward talent. Like a guy like Farabee should be standing out, and he's not.
Oh yeah. So then, in terms of some interesting names that we could play around with here, where do you see Couturier fitting in all this?
That's so hard.
Yes, he hasn't played at all this year. I understand that, but like, given the contract, given the player he was prior to these injuries, a lot of variables here, obviously, but
I mean, I think the organization has to view him as part of the core. Like, they're locked into him, right? I mean, obviously there's the caveat of health, but figuring out what the doctors say. Doctors, I use that term very lightly these days when we talk about these Flyers, but they have to view him as part of the core. There's an untradeable contract. Like, he was
He's an untradeable entity right now. Like, nobody's going to touch him.
Right. So it's like they have to view him as part of the core, whether they not want to or not.
Well, here's my thing too. I feel like when the last news that came out about Couturier was like, hey, we'll have an update 3 to 4 weeks or something like that, I think. And it's been longer than that. And we've heard radio silence. So
did somebody say there was a setback, or was that just BS Twitter?
That's what I've heard, that there was a setback. Now, again, just hearsay, but you can almost conclude and draw your own conclusions, obviously, but like the lack of updates, considering that we had lack of updates with Ryan Ellis, tie those two things together, and it's like no news isn't always good news in this regard.
I mean, isn't Chuck set to talk with fans or something in the next like couple weeks? Like, I think there's like a town hall thing or something like that.
Someone grill that son of a.
But it's gonna have to come out, because the timeline was sometime in February, or I think like early March.
Right.
And I think if he can go, I know we had this discussion a couple months ago. Like, you have to let him skate if he's clear to skate, because we need to know what we're dealing with going into the offseason with that contract.
Yeah, I think I've had a change of heart in regards to that. I agree.
Yeah, you were adamant against it.
I was adamant against it, but like now you got to get on the ice. I don't care if it's in the AHL under a conditioning stint. I don't care if it's in the NHL. You got to get on the ice.
Well, because this team needs to enter the offseason having a really good idea of whether or not Sean Couturier is going to be available and what kind of Sean Couturier is going to be available, because you can't construct a roster with that giant question mark.
Right.
And that much money tied up in a giant question mark.
Right.
But like to answer your original question, Derek, like, where do I see Couturier? Like, I did consider him part of the core pending health availability. Right. And I say the same for Atkinson as well. I think like the four that we mentioned plus Atkinson and Couturier, that's not a bad core to work around. I still think you need a couple high-end talent, and God knows we're flush with bottom sixers, so I think we're good on that front. But like, it's not as far off as I think, but it's still just those pesky little back injuries that keep on biting us in the butt, Right. And by the way, like, Atkinson's like in Ohio, like he's not even around the team at this point. Like, he's nowhere, nowhere even close.
So what about defense?
I got a good idea on this one.
Wait, hold on. Can we go back to forwards? I feel like we're missing like the hot button one.
The hot button one. Don't bring it up.
Who?
I was gonna say Hayes. Like,
okay. I thought you were gonna say Morgan Frost.
I didn't. No, that is a fair one to bring up, though. That is a fair one.
All right, so let's do Hayes quick.
No.
No,
absolutely not.
No.
I don't think it's not going to be a trade deadline, obviously, but I think offseason you do everything you can to get him out there.
100%.
Absolutely, this time of year he's playing somewhere else. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Frost is an interesting one.
I mean, I don't think you can view him as part of the core because he hasn't been consistent enough.
I think he's on the fringe, though. I mean, if he rounds out the end of this season staying and playing as consistently as he's been, I think that he's right on the cusp of being a potential piece of this core.
Yeah.
But it's the consistency again, like what I mentioned with Tippett. Like, if he can do that, I'm in. I think
he's definitely earning like the let's stay patient with this guy. Like, let's not give up on him status. You know,
he's dangling the carrot just enough to keep us interested right now.
You know, because I think at the beginning of the year, we were ready to just push his little sailboat out into the ocean.
I hope you find your dad.
I've changed my tune on him a little bit. I was in the same boat, no pun intended, as you guys were, with like get him out of here. I'm sick of this kid, but like he's shown some stuff, and I'm not just talking about the through the legs goals, which are like pretty awesome to see.
Correct.
But I feel like he has grown up a bit and taken some of that elements. And I'm with you. I don't view him as a part of the core right now, but I'm also not out there saying we have to get rid of this guy, similar to what I'm saying with Hayes.
Right.
At this point, too, think about, what is his contract up at the end of the year?
Yeah, he's on a 1-year deal.
But he's an RFA.
Years.
No one's going to give him more than what, maybe 1.5. Like,
and we control his rights.
Yeah. So I mean, even if someone decides to tender an offer to him, like we'll match it and lose like a
somebody wants to kick him $4 million, be like, later we'll take the compensation.
Right. At $4 million, it's what, like a second round pick or something like that?
Yeah.
In the 2023 draft? Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I see him as a fringe guy. If you show me this consistency next year and we have the same conversation, I'll probably say he might be a part of this core.
I almost feel like, he and Farabee are on like different trajectories right now. Like Frost is going up,
they're going to win.
Down. Yeah, they're winning. Shift right here. And I hope Farabee does turn around because I do like his game when it's going. But Frost has turned my head a little bit,
I like the edge Farabee brings. Like, he's a smaller guy, but like he has that edge and that mean streak that sometimes gets him in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But like just that presence alone, I think, does a lot for his game because like he's not afraid to chip in. He's not afraid to, bang bodies and go into those corners and take care of that stuff. Like I like that.
I feel like it's just been a confidence thing in general with him. It's like
it's
trust your skill, trust the fact that you can actually play at this level. And, I think maybe it's for better or for worse. Like we didn't really have an option to send him down. And so like he was stuck up here and like he had to perform. And so, overall, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the back half of the year when like chances are we lose some pieces and, the team will be weaker on a night in and night out basis without some of those pieces.
Weaker? So, yeah, right. They're going to bring up Tyson Forrester. He'll hit the freaking ice running. He'll be good. All right. So, anyway. Jump into defense here. How many people do we have as part of the defensive core right now?
I could think of one name. Oh, you got two. Is one just because of the contract?
Yeah.
No. And I consciously got rid of the contract guy.
Wow. All right.
Okay.
So who wants to start? I started last time, so somebody else can start.
Cam York. That's my
Absolutely.
one. Yep.
That's the one. So what's yours, Casey? What's the other one?
Mr. Risto.
Oh, God.
You tell me he has not been night in and night out one of the most effective defensemen we've had in the last.
I agree with you.
You're not wrong.
I also think when you don't have too many core players on defense, you're kind of grasping a little.
Right.
Yeah.
But those are the only two I have. And I don't – we're going to throw out Sanheim for a contract reason. Like, Sanheim I'm so pissed we signed that freaking contract. I don't know what was going through our head.
Yeah. No, that's the one that it doesn't matter how many times I think about it, I get just as heated.
Yeah. That
would have been
the
such a good return.
Timing of it was atrocious. the contract amount, I'm not going to say it's atrocious, but it's not good. I just, York for sure, but you almost have to consider Sanheim because of that contract.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Don't you have to?
But the same could be said for Hayes too on the offense, because I mean, there's still 3 years left.
Reality, right? There's a difference between the reality and like what we want, and I think like what I want is Sanheim not part of this core. I don't think. I
understand that, but I just don't see like if we're viewing it as like the core as what the organization is going to build around. They're obviously going to build around Sanheim because he's here for quite some time.
Yeah.
So if you have Risto, Sanheim, and York, I mean, obviously, I think York has first pairing potential, but like we don't have that first pairing guy.
We don't have that number one stud.
No. And
No.
you don't. To me, you don't even have a guaranteed like top 2. You know, like Cam York could, but he also might not. You know, like.
Well, am I more comfortable with him on the second pairing? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. First pairing, we'll see.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's. I mean, let's kind of sidebar a little bit on this in terms of D'Angelo. We've seen the good, we've seen the bad. If he can level things out and get to where he was towards the beginning of the year when he was actually playing really well, you think he sticks around and you think the Flyers brass is going to want to extend him?
He will not be here past the next trade deadline.
Okay.
I mean,
I agree with you. I just, he's fine. Every time I'm just like, God, Tony DeAngelo is brutal. Then he like nets a pretty sick goal. I'm like, sorry, Tony. But his defensive lapses and like the instability that he has, I just don't know if it's worth it. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as Gostisbehere was that 1 year, like before we traded him. But
there's like that children's book where they're talking about a kid's behavior, and it's like, and when he was bad, he was horrid.
Right.
And like that's Tony DeAngelo. When he's bad, you notice.
Right. And I think, we touched on this a few weeks ago, but like with the emergence of York, does that fill a void for what Tony DeAngelo does best, which is the power play? And you could make a case for that. So I don't know. I heard it must have been Flyers Daily was saying that they may try to move him this offseason or possibly even the trade deadline because it's a palpable contract with 1 year remaining after this. So
yeah, I think they'll throw out the idea in the trade deadline, but I think that they'll shop him at the draft.
Yeah, I think
smart move.
Yeah,
decent size contract. It's a guy that you could realistically plug that hole with somebody in free agency. If you need to sign a bottom pairing guy, like they do with Justin Braun for the past 2-3 years.
Right. He just doesn't. For what the Flyers need him to be, it's just not working.
But then think about it too.
Sorry,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Casey. You're good.
He's swooping in at random moments, but then it's like you never know when it's going to be.
Too erratic.
It's just inconsistent. Yeah,
right. It's like Batman. But think about it too, this coming up off season. If you're realistically looking at the Flyers getting rid of Provorov as well as DeAngelo, I mean, you're putting a pretty big hole in the blue line at that point in terms of what we currently have. So I mean, what are going to be the plans, I should say, to fill that void? Like, who do you have right now that you could realistically call up versus who's going to be available in terms of free agency? Or if you get a guy high enough in the draft, are you going to go defense? Like, there's so much at play.
I mean, you're going to have to add, whether it be via trade or free agency. I don't see anybody in the farm system coming up and, filling the void, especially if we want to take the next step, right? Like, in a perfect world, I'd love to get a return either in a Hayes trade or a Provorov trade where we're able to kind of swap and get a defenseman. I know that that's probably not realistic in like a Provorov trade, but I think that you're going to have to go to the market to get
we talked about it when we were throwing around the idea of trading Konechny and Provorov, where one deal plugs the hole that the other deal would leave. So,
Right.
like trading Konechny to get a defenseman, trading Provorov to get a forward. So, if things line up the way that they could, it could happen, but the value, it's not going to be where it was with the player you had.
Right.
Right. I also look. I know the Provorov stuff has calmed down a bit, and I think the Rangers' actions in the last week or two have probably like put that into a different light as well. But realistically, I don't think we're gonna realize what we had in Provorov until he is actually gone.
Sure.
I think like that's gonna be one of those things where like, damn, like I didn't realize like how much he actually really did. I'm not saying it's enough for him to stay here. I know that he probably wants out of here. I know the organization's probably like, okay, like
So
let's get a
Casey,
guy who doesn't worship an imaginary friend and make decisions on it.
well, Casey, I have a question for you. If we were able to eliminate like the locker room relationship issues, right, and kind of settle in with this guy being a middle pairing defenseman, and he didn't want out of here, which we're kind of getting the sense that he does want out, would you put him as a part of the core? Where it's like, if you're just looking at the hockey player, take the rest out of it for a second. If we didn't have the desire to leave, the locker room issues.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I'm on the fence a little bit because I can't separate the two. If it's just his play, like, yeah, I don't know how you don't have him as the core. But on the flip side, I think we may have seen like the max potential we can see out of Provorov at this point in time. And I think we saw it whenever the bubble was, when he was with Niskanen. Like, I think like that was the best we saw Provorov, and it hasn't been as good since. I think he's found
he found his soulmate, and once his soulmate left, he just hasn't been the same.
I'll say that, like, the last 2 years, like the defense, we could like pinpoint, been like, oh, the defense is the issue. Like, this is a bad defense. I can't say that this year. Like, I can't say that our defense is bad at all. And that goes for defensive responsibilities on the forwards as well. But like, I don't leave any night being like, what the hell were we thinking on all these plays? Like, how are we letting all these backdoor plays in? Like, that Boston game a couple of years ago that broke Carter Hart, like he snapped. And so I'm not seeing the defense as an issue. I just feel like the floor, we're at the floor right now. I feel like the ceiling could be a lot better, and I don't see Provorov as getting us to that next level. In there, I think we do need to go either trade or free market or on free agency to get some fresh legs in there for Provorov, and he probably needs a fresh start too.
Right.
Yep. Fresh starts, baby. Worked out for Shane Gostisbehere.
There you go.
So we get to goalie, and I have a feeling this is going to be an interesting conversation, just based off of realistically the two names that I'm thinking. So John looks hard at thought right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have an opinion for sure.
Shocker there. So Matt Casey, let's start with you.
We're talking Ivan Fedotov.
It could be.
No, I mean, I think Carter Hart, that's the obvious name in there, and his contract's up at the end of next year.
Yeah,
right.
So yeah.
So look, I see zero reason to move him. I think we actually have a goalie that's playing better and better as the season goes on. I'd like to see him get a little bit less games, quite frankly, like similar to what we had with Earson, but Earson, whatever. But look, I see zero reason why Carter Hart isn't our core goalie moving forward.
Okay. So John, your opinion.
I'm not ready to anoint Carter Hart the core goalie.
The Bill Parcells treatment. Don't get out the anointing oil yet.
Right. And definitely not Urson. Like, let's be real here. I'm not one of those crazy people, but when he's awesome, it's so electrifying to watch. But there still are those moments for me where he brings me back down to earth, and he brings me back down to earth hard.
It's those
Where
Steve
it's like-
Mason moments.
And it's like, for right now, I'm content with it. But when we start thinking about when this team is going to be good and we're going to have to give this guy a new contract, I'm just not ready to go that far. He has not done enough for me to say, this is the guy that I want to lead my team when the hockey world starts viewing us as legitimate contenders again.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And maybe I'm being too harsh, but
I have an opinion with Eric. You go with your thing, but I have a retort.
No. I think the obvious answer is Carter Hart. I mean, he's the guy that's been with this team the longest. Urson, it's way too early to say that he's a part of this core. Mm-hmm. And I think that you can take stellar Carter Hart any day of the week and make a case for him being the core goalie for this team. But when you factor in the stinkers that he's laid, and you factor in the times where you're thinking, where the hell was he on that one? Like, he couldn't get post to post. He couldn't recover on the back end, whatever it might be. That's when the doubt starts to creep in. And I still think he's part of the core. I do. I still think that he's a very, very good goalie. But I do have my concerns. I guess that's where I'm going to leave it.
I'll say this to your point, John, is this the guy that we want leading when we are contenders? So let's say if we go by a realistic timeline, like next year, hopefully, I'll be disappointed if we do not make a wild card spot next year in the playoffs. Like that's where like my standard is. The following year, it's like, oh, I just want to see progress in the playoffs. Let's say 2 years from now, 3 years from now, which will be past the point where he has to sign, he'll be what, 26, 27, which is like the prime. That's usually when like goalies start getting good, quite frankly. Like he's at 24 right now. Like a lot of goalies haven't even sniffed the NHL at 24. And so I think like, I think we're like, we've been trained, and I understand why as Flyers fans, to like always want the next thing and not like appreciate what we have, like from like a homegrown talent standpoint. And like, this is the first time, and I'm not ready to go in with Erison as well. Like, but it's like for a little bit there, we had 2 homegrown goalies that were doing pretty damn well, bringing us in nicely underneath the cap. Like I'll enjoy that as long as I can, but I don't know. There's still some time. I still think we have like a year of like this solid structure for him to play in before we have to make that call. But I think the age is a huge factor here in that like he's going to be in his prime when we're ready to actually become a real hockey team again.
I also wouldn't lie, though. The idea that he is going to be a free agent soon also kind of skews me to not. I'm not ready to make him part of the long-term core because I'm not convinced that this guy's going to want to stay here.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm also not convinced that he's going to command an amount that I'm going to be comfortable paying him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where it's like, I would not be shocked if when he hits free agency, he goes elsewhere, whether it's because he wants out or if another team is willing to pay him because of all the reasons you just said, Casey.
Right. Yep.
It's a matter too if Chuck can sell him on or whoever's the GM or the coach, can they sell him on the direction of the team? Like if they're going to tell him, listen, here's where we want to be next year. This is what we're going to do to get there. Is that going to be enough for Carter Hart to be like, you know what? I like the direction of this team. I want to stay here. Or is he going to just tuck tail and be like, nah, I'm done. I'm going somewhere that's already ready made for me to contend and be in the cup.
And you have to factor in like where Erson will be too, because John Tortorella has made it very clear how much he likes Erson. Where, you know, the more he gets to play, if that continues, like Carter Hart is going to start to feel that. You know, and I don't think that that's going to be something that is going to be like the decision maker. But if Erson continues to play well and he starts getting more playing time in the NHL next season, and Tortorella is always hyping up Erson and kind of just like with Carter Hart being like, well, I don't really talk too much about the goalies. Like I do think I think there are too many X factors for me to sit down and just go, when I'm thinking core, I'm thinking the players that are going to be a part of this team for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
that point, sorry, go ahead, finish your thought.
I just think like with goalie, it's hard because you only have a few of them, and it's like you feel like you need to pick at least one. But for me, I think the safe thing is to just say I'm not convinced anybody is a part of the core right now.
But to your point too, that I feel like to me concerns me a little bit more about Carter Hart himself as opposed to the franchise's view of Carter Hart, because it boils back down to, my argument every single time we always discussed goalies when it comes to how Mason and Neuwirth were. Mason always was looking over his shoulder because Neuwirth was the more athletic goalie, yada, yada, yada. But he was always hurt when he got the chance. And it's like, if you're given the chance to be the number one goalie, and you prove that you can do it, but you're still constantly looking over your shoulder because you got a capable and competent 1B, that says more to me about your psyche and how you handle adversity than anything. And I just don't like that. I think that if you can't handle it,
keeps it as an X factor.
Yeah. And if you can't handle it, I don't think you're cut out for it. Like I just don't.
I'm also not going to lie. The blowhards for Carter Hart make me want to go the opposite just because too,
I get that.
I can't help it.
Yeah, I get that. It's frustrating. He's not God's gift to ice hockey. He's not. Like, he's a good goalie.
Can we go back real quick? What, you guys never chimed in on my Ristolainen comment. Are you not on board with Risto in the core?
I think again, I could see it because of the contract.
No.
Yeah.
Like I agree with you, Casey. I think that he has played his part this year. Like, and I think that he's settled in after that horrific, when he finally came back, that horrific few weeks where he looked pretty awful.
Right.
But again, I think he falls into that category where it's like if the Flyers had a chance to trade him,
right? Yeah.
Looking at that contract, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, sure."
I could see it because if he's going to continue to play the way he's playing right now, he's laying his body on the line every single night. He's making the plays that not every other defenseman is going to want to make. Like that right there is a key piece to a team because it's I don't want to say rare.
He's putting points up. He's finally putting points up again.
That breakaway was silky smooth.
Dirty.
Good God. Dirty. It was beautiful. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, okay. I think I'm on board. Let's throw him in the core.
I just had this idea. In Danny Brière's office, he has this little bucket, and they've got little sheets of paper, and the bucket's titled CFUs. And when he finally becomes GM, Chuck gets fired. He brings out this bucket of CFUs, and people are like, "What are these?" He goes, "Well, this is my Chuck fuck up box. These are all the deals that he put together that now I got to try to undo." So he's like Ristolainen, Travis Sanheim,
like Chris Jericho going through the list. Like,
I was also thinking back to Ivan Provorov, and somebody goes to Niskanen's house and just sees this giant sack of letters. They're like, "Niskanen, what's that?" He's like, "Those are my Provorov letters."
He won't stop writing.
Every 2 weeks, he writes me a letter about how much
I miss you. Come back.
It's like the Notebook. I wrote you for 5 years.
The wife's been hiding the letters from him so he wouldn't return to hockey and stay home being a dad. Like, I did this for your own good. You saw what he did on Pride Night. I was saving you.
Provorov knocks on his door. He's like, "Ivan, what are you doing here?" "I can't quit you."
I miss you.
Brokeback Mountain.
Come back to me.
I can't quit you, Matty. I can't quit you.
Chuck said he'll have you back on a veteran minimum.
Come with me on this horse. I have a tent.
Putin let me borrow his horse. Come on. All right. So we talked about Thrive or Die, but I feel like we pretty much covered it there in terms of who's doing well, who's not doing well, who's part of the core, who's not part of the core. I think that pretty much wraps up this episode here. Hoagie's not here to do the dad joke. John's rejoicing. Casey's pretty happy too.
Rejoicing because of Hoagie not being here.
I miss him. I like Hoagie. I don't know what your guys' gripe with him is, but I like him.
I like him.
I'm good with him. I'm kidding. I like Hoagie.
All right.
Hoagie's a good dude. He's just so fun to like. Kind of like Yeah,
that was another reason why we brought
fat
him
kid
on.
in
So
gym
that
class.
I wasn't that kid anymore. Like I wasn't that guy anymore getting picked on all episodes. So I'm glad. That's why I'm so glad Hoagie's a part of this show.
But he gave us a really nice Christmas gift, which was totally uncalled for, but very welcome. It was very, very sweet of him.
Very nice. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't drink booze in it because it's kind of large, but it's a nice thing for my nighttime tea.
Oh, I was doing some outdoor cocktails in that right around Christmas time. That was nice.
I actually drank the whiskey that it gave us.
Fires and stuff, yeah.
Real bougie. All right, Casey, let everybody know where they're going to be able to find you.
I'm on Twitter somewhere. I'm not really on there all that much, but
you'll see them like your posts.
I'm big on the likes. I'm not big on the posts, you know. Reply every now and then. On Street Casey.
All right. And John.
Yeah, you can find this podcast
everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Which includes our affiliates, the Flyers High and Wide. You can find them on Twitter at FlyersHW. You can find our fellas over at 5 Minute Major Podcast. They're on Twitter at 5Min Major Pod. You can check out the Hockey Focus on Twitter as well. They're on Twitter at the Hockey Focus. I'm on Twitter at Pod Street Bob. John's on Twitter at Pod Street Gove. All four of us, with Hoagie as well, are on Twitter at Pod SD Bullies. And folks, that is it for your first Pod Street Bullies episode in 2 weeks. And until the next one, after the All-Star break,
Haze now.
Enjoy.
Bye now.